I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no.
Today, we will discuss about hormonal basis of behavior and the major endocrine glands and their functions. The main objectives in this lesson are to understand behaviorism in a biopsychological perspective, definition, nature and scope of hormones, major endocrine glands, nature and functions. Let us understand behavior from a biological perspective. The 19th century is when William James gave the first workable definition for psychology, that is, the science of mental life, attempting to understand the cognitive, emotional and motivational process that underlie human experience, thought and action. This provided a path for the different schools of psychology to explore the field in depth. One of the prominent schools of psychology is functionalism, or school of psychology that focused on how the mind works and what it does. This allowed the newly emerging field to focus on the structure and function of the brain and how it affects our behavior. Though functionalism was later rejected, it allowed for further growth and development, leading way for a new school of thought, that is biopsychology, the study of physiology and biological processes to understand human behavior. This field of psychology is often referred to as biopsychology or physiological psychology. This branch of psychology has grown tremendously in recent years and is linked to other areas of science, including biology, neurology and genetics. The biological perspective is essentially a way of looking at human problems and actions. The study of physiology and biological processes has played a significant role in psychology since its earliest beginnings. Charles Darwin first introduced the idea that evolution and genetics play a role in human behavior. Biopsychology studies how biological processes influence the mind and behavior. This area is closely linked to neuroscience and utilizes tools such as MRI and PET scans to look at brain injury or brain abnormalities. Let us understand the links between biopsychology and human behavior. The researchers influenced with functionalism focused on the functionality of the brain and worked in identifying how the brain or different parts of human brain influences behavior. Support from the life sciences such as anatomy or physiology has helped researchers understand the brain and its functioning to a certain extent. They have conducted research on the localization of brain function, neurons and neurotransmitters, and also their impact on thoughts, emotions and behavior. The nervous system, genetics, the brain, the immune system and the endocrine system are a few subjects of interest to the biopsychologists. Over the past few years, this field has grown enormously and significantly with advancements that enable us to explore and understand the human brain and nervous system. Magnetic resonance imaging or MRI and positron emission tomography PET scans give researchers tool to observe the brain under a variety of conditions. Scientists can now look at the effects of brain damage, drugs and diseases in ways that were not possible in the past. These research findings also provide us insights to cognitive psychology. The nervous system is further divided into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system then controls the internal organs and activities related to it. The central nervous system, controlled by the brain and spinal cord, controls the overall body activity. The brain and the central nervous system. The central nervous system is comprised of the brain and spinal cord. The CNS or the central nervous system receives sensory information from the nervous system and controls the body responses. The CNS plays a primary role in receiving information from various areas of the body and then coordinating this activity to produce the body's responses. The central nervous system has three main components. They are the brain, the spinal cord and the neurons. The brain. The human brain is not only one of the most important organs in the human body, it is also the most complex. Learning more about how people think and process information not only helps researchers gain a deeper understanding of how the human brain works, but it allows psychologists to develop new ways of helping people deal with psychological difficulties. The different parts of the brain are cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the part of the brain that functions to make human beings unique. Distinctly human traits include higher thought, language, and human consciousness, as well as the ability to think, reason, and imagine all originate in the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex can further be divided into four lobes. Frontal lobe. This lobe is located at the front of the brain and is associated with reasoning, motor skills, higher level cognition, and expressive language. At the back of the frontal lobe, near the central sulcus, lies the motor cortex. The motor cortex receives information from various lobes of the brain and utilizes this information to carry out body movements. Damage to the frontal lobe can lead to changes in sexual habits, socialization, and attention, as well as increased risk taking. Next, parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is located in the middle section of the brain and is associated with processing tactile sensory information such as pressure, touch, and pain. A portion of the brain known as somatosensory cortex is located in this lobe and is essentially to the processing of these body senses. Temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is located on the bottom section of the brain. The location of this lobe is also of the primary auditory cortex, which is important for interpreting sounds and the language we hear. The hippocampus is also located in the temporal lobe, which is why this portion of the brain is also heavily associated with the formation of memories. Damage to the temporal lobe can lead to the problems with memory, speech, perception, and language skills. Occipital lobe. The occipital lobe is located at the back portion of the brain and is associated with interpreting visual stimuli and information. The primary visual cortex, which receives and interprets information from the retinas of the eyes, is located in the occipital lobe. Damage to this lobe can cause visual problems such as difficulty recognizing objects, an inability to identify colors, and trouble recognizing words. The brainstem. The brainstem is comprised of the midbrain, pons, and medulla. The cerebellum sometimes refers to as the little brain. The cerebellum lies on the top of the pons behind the brainstem. The cerebellum is comprised of small lobes and receives information from the balance system of the inner ear, sensory nerves, and the auditory and the visual systems. It is involved in the coordination of movements as well as motor learning. Spinal cord. The spinal cord connects to the brain via the brainstem and then runs down through the spinal canal located inside the vertebra. The spinal cord carries information from various parts of the body to and from the brain. In case of some reflex movements, responses are controlled by spinal pathways without the involvement of the brain. Neurons. Neurons are the building blocks of the central nervous system. Billions of these nerve cells can be found throughout the body and they can communicate with one another to produce physical responses and actions. Neurons are the body's information superhighway. An estimated 86 billion neurons can be found in the brain alone. The entire central nervous system is also immersed in a substance known as cerebrospinal fluid, which forms a chemical environment to allow the nerve fibers to transmit information effectively as well as offering yet another layer of protection from potential damage. Functions of the different parts of the brain. Cerebrum controls the movement, concentration, planning, problem solving, speech, smell, facial recognition. Involuntary actions is controlled by brainstem or medulla. The cerebellum balances posture and allows for coordination. The cerebrum also allows us to interpret sensation of touch and pressure. It allows us to understand taste, allows in hearing, and also allows us to understand what we look at, that is vision. The endocrine system. The endocrine system consists of several glands that are located throughout the body. These glands secrete hormones or chemical messengers that signal the body to perform essential functions. These are usually related to growth and metabolism. These hormones are released directly into the bloodstream and travel throughout the body, affecting any cell that contains a receptor for the hormones. Their effect is widespread, slow, and they are long lasting. They regulate all types of bodily functions. They are controlled by the collaboration between hypothalamus and pituitary gland. An imbalance in these hormones causes disorders. The endocrine system consists of pineal gland, pituitary gland and hypothalamus, thyroid and parathyroid gland, thymus, pancreas, adrenal glands, ovary in the female and testis or testicle in the male, and placenta in the female during pregnancy. This brings us to the question, how do hormones work? These hormones are involved in regulating all kinds of bodily functions. These hormones are controlled through the interaction between hypothalamus in central nervous system and the pituitary gland in the endocrine system. Hormones coordinate the physiology and behavior of an individual by regulating and integrating and controlling bodily functions. Another example of endocrine regulation of physiological and behavioral function is provided by pregnancy. Estrogens and progesterone concentrations are elevated during pregnancy, and these hormones are often involved in mediating maternal behavior in the mothers. We also need to understand that not all cells are influenced by each and every hormone. The hormone is effective only if there are specific receptors for that specific hormone. There must be a sufficient number of receptors available for a specific hormone to produce any effect. We must clearly understand that hormones do not cause behavioral change. They influence the three systems: the input sensory system, integrators, the central nervous system, output system or the effectors. For example, muscles, so that a specific stimuli can bring about a change or certain response in the appropriate behavior or social context. The hormones affects these three systems or any single system to elicit behavior in an individual. This provides us with an hypothesis experiment model to explore the issue further. Sometimes behavior affects hormones too. For example, the site of territorial intruder may elevate blood testosterone concentration in resident male birds and thereby stimulate singing or fighting behavior. Similarly, male mice or rhesus monkey that lose a fight decrease circulating testosterone concentrations for several days or even weeks afterward. Comparable results have also been reported in humans. Testosterone concentrations are affected not only in humans involved in physical combat but also in those involved in simulated battles. For example, testosterone concentrations were elevated in winners and reduced in losers of regional chess tournaments. In some cases, hormones are affected by the anticipation of behavior. For example, testosterone concentrations also influence sexual motivation and behavior in women. We can notice influence of hormones for aggressive behavior. This figure shows the major glands that secrete hormones. They are as follows: 1. The pituitary gland or the master gland, 2. The pineal gland, 3. The thyroid gland, 4. Pancreas, 5. The gonads, and 6. The adrenal glands. The next chart shows the secretions produced by major glands and its effects. Hypothalamus gland. It stimulates and controls the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland or master gland. It is divided into two parts: anterior adrenocortical tropic hormone ACTH, which stimulates the adrenal cortex and the release of cortisol during the stress response. Posterior pituitary gland oxytocin is responsible for uterus contractions during childbirth. Pineal gland releases melatonin, which is responsible for important biological rhythms including the sleep-wake cycle. Thyroid gland releases thyroxine, responsible for regulating metabolism. Adrenal gland, adrenal medulla, adrenal and noradrenaline are released. These are the key hormones in the fight or flight response. Adrenal cortex releases cortisol. This stimulates the release of glucose to provide the body with energy while suppressing the immune system. Ovaries in female produce oestrogen. This controls the regulation of the female reproductive system, including the menstrual cycle and pregnancy. Testis in male produces testosterone, responsible for the development of male sex characteristics during puberty while also promoting muscle growth. Let us look at the prominent hormones that influence behavior. Steroid hormones. Cortisol increases the carbohydrate metabolism and mediates the stress responses. Estradiol, the uterine and other female tissues development and regulates sexual motivation and performance in females and males. The testosterone promotes sperm production and male secondary sexual characteristics. It also promotes sexual motivation and behavior, typically by being converted to estradiol. Let us look at peptides and protein hormones. Oxytocin stimulates milk letdown and uterine contractions during birth and promotes social bonding. Prolactin has many actions relating to reproduction, water balance and behavior associated with parental care. Thyroxine increases oxidation rates in tissue and affects neural development. Vasopressin increases water reabsorption in the kidney and affects learning and memory. Now that we have an idea about how each gland impacts our physiology or body, let us look into the major glands: the pituitary, the thyroid, the adrenal and the gonads. Pituitary gland. This gland is located near hypothalamus and works in association with the hypothalamus, often called as the master gland because the messenger hormones control all the other glands in the endocrine system. The pituitary secretes endorphins for pain relief and a number of key hormones that regulate the fluid levels of the body. The thyroid gland. Located in the neck, the thyroid gland releases hormones that regulate growth, metabolism and appetite. The adrenal gland. The adrenal glands sit atop our kidneys and secrete hormones involved in the stress response, such as epinephrine, adrenaline and norepinephrine or noradrenaline. The pancreas is an internal organ that secretes hormones that regulate blood sugar levels, insulin and glucagon. The pancreatic hormones are essential for maintaining stable levels of blood sugar throughout the day by lowering blood glucose levels, insulin or raising them, glucagon. The gonads. The gonads secrete sexual hormones which are important in reproduction and mediate both sexual motivation and behavior. The female gonads are the ovaries. The male gonads are the testes. Ovaries secrete estrogen and progesterone, and the testis secretes androgens such as testosterone. What happens with the endocrine disorders? Anytime one of these hormones is out of balance, many other systems, glands and hormones can be affected. Women with polycystic ovary syndrome, for example, may show altercations in follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, androgens or testosterone and insulin, which can in turn affect her estrogen levels. Also, people who suffer from diabetes do not produce enough insulin. Therefore, they must take medications that stimulate or replace insulin production, and they must closely control the amount of sugars and carbohydrates they consume. In hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease, the thyroid secretes too much of the hormone thyroxine, causing agitation, bulging eyes, and weight loss. In hypothyroidism, reduced hormone levels causes sufferers to experience tiredness, and they often complain of feeling cold. Fortunately, thyroid disorders are often treatable with medication that help re-establish a balance in hormones secreted by the thyroid. Alterations of any of these hormones can cause changes in weight, metabolism, and energy levels. Now, let us summarize the program. The glands of the endocrine system secrete hormones to regulate normal body functions. The hypothalamus serves as the interface between nervous system and the endocrine system, and it controls the secretions of the pituitary. The pituitary serves as the master gland, controlling the secretions of all other glands. The thyroid secretes thyroxine, which is important for basic metabolic processes and growth. The adrenal glands secrete hormones involved in stress responses. The pancreas secretes hormones that regulate blood sugar levels, and the ovaries and the testes produce sex hormones that regulate sexual behavior and motivation. The hormones are involved in regulating all kinds of bodily functions. These hormones are controlled through the interaction between hypothalamus in the central nervous system and the pituitary gland in the endocrine system. Hormones coordinate the physiology and behavior of an individual by regulating and integrating and also controlling bodily functions. These secretions and management of organs, systems, and cells, the behavior of an individual is influenced.